for Mothers Against Addiction, and we are lucky enough here to have join our book club this week, Nancy, the author of The Emotionally Exhausted Woman. We would love her insight and her take on her book, and we are just so lucky to have her here. Did you want to introduce yourself, Nancy?
Sure, and I am delighted to be here. So I am Nancy Colier, that is true. Um, and the author of The Emotionally Exhausted Woman and a number of other books, Can't Stop Thinking, which is about obsessive thinking, and they kind of are sister books a little bit. Part of what exhausts us is our relentless mind. Um, and I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a public speaker. I'm a mom, wife, friend, dog owner. And so I am happy to be here. And however I can help such an important organization, I'm ready.
Awesome. We have some questions we'd love to ask. So to start off, many mothers facing addiction in the family often feel responsible for everybody's well-being. What advice do you have for them to start prioritizing their own emotional needs without feeling guilty?
Boy, you start with easy ones, right? Uh, that's such a big topic because as women, and then of course mothers, my goodness, we are conditioned from the very beginning to see our value, our very worth as being related to how well we take care of other people. That's what makes us valuable. That's what allows us to be praised and loved so often in our families. And that's particularly true for women. Of course, it's true for men as well, but particularly for women, our caretaking abilities. So, and simultaneously, when we award the same sort of care to ourselves, often we receive a lot of judgment, selfish. There are any number of them, but selfish is one of the biggest ones. And we have this deep cultural belief that the more selfless we can be, the more admirable and honorable. And uh, there are lots of cash and prizes for disappearing our own needs. And in addition to that, the whole concept of a woman having needs is so tricky because needs are seen as something that ultimately, I mean, boiled at the very core, we shouldn't have needs. That taking care of other people's needs should be enough to feed our needs. Totally false. Totally false. We're not symbiotic. We're not one organism. So the first is to recognize the conditioning, how prohibited having needs and caring about yourself is in this culture. So that's the Kool-Aid we've been drinking. We first got to sort of see what's in the glass before we can start to live a different way. And then I would start to invite women to look at what is it like to live without getting anything for yourself. Are you okay just feeding off the well-being of those in your family and so on? So we have to get in touch with some of the suffering of living that way, disappeared, right? Because we stay safe. We have no needs. We're what everybody wants us to be. We're pleasing to everybody. Wonderful. That's very safe. But what does it cost us? So the very first step is getting real about, when you're drained and living with nothing coming in, how's that for you? Even that kind of question can feel like sacrilege. What is like for you to not to get to have any needs? And then there are all sorts of steps, which we'll talk about as we go forward, where we just start to invite the question, what do I want? What do I need? These are questions grown women well into their decades had never asked themselves. They know what everybody in their life wants and needs. No idea what they want and need. So we have to invite that question even into the conversation and be ready for the backlash of how dare you? How dare you even ask yourself or need anything? So it starts with starting to move away from this life of should, the treadmill of being what is expected, and moving into, well, what do I need? What do I as a separate human being from my family?
Definitely, definitely. Um, going off of that, our next question really springboards off of that. One major theme in your book seems to be the need to recognize and honor your own needs. Um, how might you think a mother struggling with addiction or with an addicted child should start identifying those needs? I know you kind of said that cultural capacity of trying to push back on fulfilling our own needs. How do you think we should start in that process?
Well, one of the things that can happen with addiction, right, is, and it's not the fault of mom, dad, anyone, but we can, even if we didn't start out there, we can end up in a kind of codependent relationship in the sense that the only way we know how to take care of this or try to help this is coming at the cost of our own needs. Right? So, but we're so afraid, and I get it, to put ourselves and our own needs on the table because it feels like we are taking away from what could help our child. And so we get locked in this cycle of trying to help, trying to help, trying to help in this sort of desperate way. And there's, there's little room for ourselves there because, again, that always feels like, oh, that's time away or attention away or energy away from fixing this addiction. So again, we start by acknowledging how hard this is, self-compassion, how darn hard this is to give and give and give and often not get the result that we want. And in the process, not be getting what we need. So we need to actually start in very little ways and baby steps to take mini breaks from the problem and to try and take care of something that just feels good. Not I should need this, I should run off and, I don't know, take a walk in nature. Maybe I don't want to take a walk in nature. Maybe I want to just lay on the couch and watch Netflix for 10 minutes or what have you. Just start to take care of yourself. Give yourself mini holidays from the worrying and all of that. And baby steps, because we need the two to coexist, taking care of self and trying to help with the addiction. We have them as contradictory. So it's like exposure therapy. We start with little needs. What do we really need? Do we need a cup of tea? Do we need to call a friend and vent? Do we need to not think about the problem in the family for a moment, right? Take a holiday from, step out of it. I can't fix it for the next 10 minutes and I'm not going to try. One thing I recommend with all my clients is several times during the day, we give ourselves 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes where I'm going to let myself not know what the answer is. I'm going to let myself say, I can't figure this out. Their mind holidays from trying to fix the problem. So when it comes to learning how to take care of your own needs in the face of addiction, primary, separating, I can take care of myself and try and take care of my child or whomever is addicted, and then baby steps, and then see if the system falls apart, see if it makes such a difference that those fears, if they come true, and then mini holidays through the day of just for now, just for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to give myself permission to not be able to figure it out and not have any problem to solve, just a break from the problem to solve.
Your answers are they're transcending into our next questions perfectly. Um, our next one was, how does the shame of these problems contribute to emotional exhaustion, and what steps can mothers take to alleviate it? I know you talked about taking those breaks, talked about that. Do you think setting those boundaries and setting those stages is what can help alleviate that?
Shame is such a big topic. It's such a big topic. And it is a really tricky one because it's not, I've done something bad, like guilt. It's I am bad. And again, going back to deep, deep conditioning. If there's something that your child is suffering, mom, the mom, the mom did something often deep in our belief system. And so again, this today so far is kind of about self-compassion, but we need to, gosh, just wrap a really big blanket of love around ourselves that that judgment sits in the stew, right? And then we got to find a place which is whoever I was that I'm blaming myself for, that I think caused this. And I tell you what, we don't cause addiction. We don't, as moms. But whatever it is, can I forgive myself for having been that person and having done the best I could and thought that was the best I could, even if I don't like it now and I don't like the result, whatever it is I'm holding myself guilty for, can I accept that that was the best I had and not fall into this cultural assumption that because your child struggles with addiction, that it's your fault. So this mantra of it's not my fault. I didn't cause it. I can't cure it. Right? Ultimately, that person has to do it. To actually start saying that to ourselves, it's not my fault. And then to start to face, well, what am I afraid of if I were innocent? What am I really afraid of if this isn't because of me? Because as horrible as that shameful place is, and for some people, it feels safer to be the reason rather than this is a choice of my child, or my child is suffering. So, or whatever it might be, we have to face if it's not all because of us, right? So it's a funny coping strategy to carry the blame and say I am bad and that's why my child is like this, because maybe the ultimate grief of my child is like this either for reasons I don't know or because they can't bear feeling what they feel, whatever it is that feels even more unbearable than we are to blame. So just starting to introduce the idea that what if I'm not to blame? What if I'm not? What if this whole idea of my being bad and, culturally, people are ashamed to say that their child is addicted as if they caused it. That's the link that we want to sort of bring some healthy skepticism. And often that shame, Emily, deprives that mom of kindness from other people. Because when we start talking about it and saying, this is so hard for me, not just them, we feel terrible. We feel guilty that we could have an experience of having a child that's addicted. Of course, we have a feeling about having a child that's addicted. It doesn't mean we're making it about us. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that as the mother of an addicted child, you have your own suffering. Right? It doesn't take away from your child's suffering and your deep caring about that. But you get to have your own experience of that, which is not just about fixing them. It's you as the mom.
How do you feel with the perception of mothers need to have this shell of being stronger, especially in situations with addiction of their children addictions, and feel like they have to be the cornerstone, they have to be that foundation, they have to hold this weight. How do you feel women should feel feel in that moment?
So it depends on the company as well. So, and it depends on how old the child is, because there is some reality to if that child is young, on the younger side, right? There is some sense of, I have to hold this, be the ground for them. And then who am I as an adult with others, right? So I'm allowed to break down. I'm allowed to not understand anything. I'm allowed to not be able to bear this. I'm allowed to have no idea what on earth to do here. I'm allowed to be enraged with my child. I'm allowed to be completely disappointed in my child. I'm allowed to be angry at God or whomever is our um, higher power. Maybe not with the child, but to honor, again, your own experience of this may have to go on in the company of people you trust that are not your child. So both can happen, right? And there may come a time, depends on where the child is with the addiction and how old and so on, where the relationship between you and your child can get more real in what this has cost you. But that's an intuition of when that could be heard, if ever.
I think one thing a lot of our mothers struggle with is that emotional weight that they have to carry, and the release of it is very hard. How would you recommend these mothers can offset that emotional burden?
It is such a burden. And so every day, we put our hand on our heart, we close our eyes, we take a few deep breaths, and we acknowledge how darn hard this is and how much we don't want it on our plate and how ununderstandable it is. We do that for ourselves, right? We write about it. We call friends that we trust and can I just 10 minutes talk about how excruciating this is? And so for those moments in the day, and again, the self-compassion practice is daily, um, we get a break from being the strong one. We get a break, a little bit of a break. We get to put down the emotional 1,000-pound backpack. Just by acknowledging it's there, we put it down.
I think for us as an organization, we want to be a resource to help those women alleviate that burden. And our support groups weekly, we try to have them unload and have them have that like minded mentality of saying, we're all women here. We all feel this burden. We all want to put it down together. How would you recommend us being able as an organization to support those women?
You're doing it. I mean, when we feel burdened and we're suffering and maybe we can't figure a way through yet, we need community. We can feel very alone in those times. And so we take turns in a sense where um, I get to hand you my backpack and you hold it for me. And at another time, I'll hold it for you. But we cannot isolate. We have to be around people that get it. To be alone in this, it's so hard on its own. To be alone in it is too much. So it's really that human kindness of, it's my time, you take care of me. Even giving yourself permission like that can feel radical, that I need to be taken care of. Oh, but it's about your child. It's about your child's, but I need to be taken care of as the mother, and I need to be in company with people who get what this is.
Um, what else would you say for mothers who feel like they're failing if they need to take time to step back to take care of themselves? Um, we want to make sure we're supporting ourselves while we're supporting others. How do you recommend mothers do that in a way that they feel not guilty, not shame? I know we've talked about those words throughout this, but
Well, I mean, it's funny in our culture, right? Because we've come up with all of these sort of systems where, you have to fill your own bucket first or put your oxygen mask on first. But essentially, what we framed it as is, in order to take good care of them, well, you have to sneak in a little bit of care for yourself, right? But that's great. And if that gets you 10 minutes of your own attention, or a moment to sit in the sun and just be and honor your own journey here, um, it is not enough. We need to recognize that um, it's not a competition about who's suffering more, who gets the attention. That as a separate human being from your child, you must be nourished as well. You must be nourished. So what nourishes me, right? Because ultimately, we're so many moms we're existing on fumes, and it is not a betrayal of anyone else to say, I am also a sentient being who I've been taught I'm not allowed to have needs, but I actually do have needs. And so just starting at the basic level, that we're not one entity, zero sum, and the child takes up all of the needs. We're both here. We both require something. And again, that is not a betrayal. So we start again with baby steps. What really calms my nervous system? What allows me to feel momentarily nourished? Might be just sitting, as I said, sitting on a bench quietly, with yourself for 5 minutes and taking care of nobody. Might be to take your puppy for a walk. It might be to write a letter to a friend, but to ask yourself that you're allowed to exist in addition to your child. Not either or. We're raised to believe it's either or. It's both and. And so we have to get under that belief system that one or the other, and start implementing it in little bit. It's going to feel really scary in the beginning to take care of, what you need to survive. And again, first we look at, how not surviving, we're certainly not thriving, but how we're hanging on by a thread. You have to acknowledge that. And then little baby ways of, what do I need to feel temporarily nourished? And it's going to be scary, and it's going to face a lot of judgments from ourselves mostly. And we have to do it anyway. And then see, how do we feel? Do we feel a little more cared for? And do we have just a little more steam or a little more empathy or a little more energy to attend to the addiction or whatever the family requires.
Amazing. Um, I think we have touched on all the questions, unless anybody else has any questions for Nancy.
Yeah, I have a question, Nancy, and this is you kind of addressed it, but I think one of the biggest challenges that mothers have is setting boundaries for their children, especially a child that's going through addiction. There's a really extreme push and pull, and one of the things that I was reading, you talked about kind of a likability cage. And, towards the end of the book, you're talking about writing your own story. Is there any maybe insight or anything you can discuss for, a mother? Do you think it's giving themselves permission, or is it accepting? Like, maybe if you could just chat, I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Well, boundaries, you're spot on. Huge issue. And, that's part of the codependence, right? It's setting boundaries. So we want to get into, I mean, these are really big topics. And so I don't want to give it short shrift, but when we're setting boundaries, we have to first look at what are we really afraid of? Saying no. We're saying I'm not available. We're saying I can't help you right now, or whatever it might be, or putting yourself and your own needs in the mix, right? These are all forms of setting boundaries. First, what is it I'm really afraid of? Do I get 5 good minutes with my kid and I don't want to be the bad guy when I'm doing that? So it's like whatever you want, you're okay right now. What is it that I'm really challenged by saying I exist separately from you and I have my own needs, and putting no into your vocabulary? No. So part of what we want to start talking about with our community is, what's the threat of having a no? And are we afraid that if there's any no, that things will go even more off the rails? And maybe is that how we got here? Right? So we want to look at that. We want to look at, how's it working for you to have no boundaries? How's that going for you? Is that helping the situation? Right? Is it helping you? Just a very sort of factual question: helping or hurting not having any boundaries? And again, what is the real deep fear? If they don't love me, I'll lose them forever. I won't be likable. Is that really what the fear is? Because things are so messy and have to just be whatever they want me to be at all costs, because that's the only shot I have. How's that working for me? And, I watch as mothers who have, particularly an addicted child, might start out with boundaries, and little by little they're eroded because there's a kind of helplessness of, if I set a boundary, it will only get worse. And so it's a little bit like diving off the cliff before we see any net in sight or a parachute, which is, this is not working. And so what happens if I set a baby bound, right? And see the thing I'm terrified of, they'll reject me forever, or they'll go deeper into the addiction, or they won't talk to me at all, or what have you. It's so scary. So can I challenge it in these little ways? All starts with the initial question is, what's the real existential fear if I exist separately from them with my own needs? There's also the piece, Donovan, though, about when we set a boundary, we're kind of bringing their behavior into the light, right? We get into these relationships so often with addicts where we stop sort of addressing the reality of what the situation is, and we lose the boundaries, and then we're sort of enabling the behavior to some degree. Setting a boundary is saying, wait a minute, I exist. That's sort of like bringing down the fourth wall, in theater. It's I'm going to put this in the light. There's a real thing going on here. I exist in this relationship, which if we have no boundaries, there is no you. You're just sort of melted into them. And so when we say I have a no, I have my own needs. This is not okay. I'm doing a lot here to make things okay. This, whatever it might be, the boundary, um, that suddenly you're in the story, which with a lot of addicts, we're not allowed in the story. That's the deal, right? That's the rules of the bond, that we disappear. So it can be scary to show up with edges as somebody who's having an experience of you, the addict. And we do that gently, slowly, with the awareness of what the fear is. That makes some sense?
Yeah. 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 That was, that made a lot of sense. It's a reoccurring thing that we're constantly, talking about when people are discussing. And it seems like it's a challenge, and it's a very, very understandable challenge. And I think there was a lot that's in your book that resonates with that, which is managing a lot of things, trying to be perfect, trying to do kind of all these pressures and,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
so yeah, thank you. Yeah, that
And, one thing too, which is there's a kind of sober truth to when we set boundaries. It might not be so smooth. For women, we are so well trained at making things work, making things easy, making it smooth, making it go well, taking care of everyone's emotional needs. And when we start saying no and setting boundaries and telling the truth, just the simple truth, right? We bump into a lot of what? That's a new thing. And we don't always get all the accolades. And people like it when we have no boundaries. People love it when we work around their whatever they need and make it work. So it takes an awareness of it's courageous to set boundaries. And because that may run you into some turbulence in the air, right? That's a good thing. That means you're shaking up the system, right? But this paradigm of make it work no matter what, which is make it easy for the other, make it smooth, we have to break through that. If we're going to live a life that's authentic and takes care of us, some people are gonna be upset at certain times. That's the deal. And we have to accept that. It's not about, setting boundaries and everybody's great with it. Not always.
That's great. I think I think your insight and your book really help us as organization try to support these women better. Because ultimately we want to be that resource where they can unload, release that burden. We want to be that outlet that they need, that time away, that time to accept that, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay. You don't have to feel negative about being overwhelmed. You don't have to feel these grief and this heaviness. And we want to help unload that. And I think your book is a really great way for us to help women in that aspect.
And I encourage women too. The self-help is really it's wonderful. And I think it at the deepest layer, it sort of misses the boat in the sense that women are saddled with other beliefs like just positive affirmations. It's yet another failing that you might be having a hard time or feel the load, right? You should just change your attitude, or this sort of thing where we replace what are really painful experiences with a different attitude. And it's a bit like putting a hat on dirty hair. Uh, when the going gets tough, the hat falls off. They don't work. So self-help also teaches us that, we always have to change the way we feel. It's not really about changing it. It's about making space for how we feel. And then how do we want to be in the world and interact with carrying that, right? So it's acknowledging the hardness of it and then honoring the courage of walking through that with this situation. It's not to get rid of it. Self-help keeps telling us, get rid of those feelings that you don't want to feel. The feelings don't just go away because we tell them it's better to feel happy, right? Or we get some sort of kudos for putting on a happy face. It's give him a lot of love, that part of us that's struggling. And then now, how do we want to walk through it, right? It's that permission to have all of our experience, the miracle and catastrophe of ourselves. That's ultimately what supports us, right? And to come together and these little practices of setting a boundary, saying no, daring to put your own need on the table. Sometimes self-help tells us, the okay list of self-care. Oh, get a manicure. I don't want a manicure, right? That's not what takes care of me. Maybe it is. That's great. But the making yourself a destination is such a loving gesture. What takes care of me? Is it a conversation with a really good friend? Is it quiet? Is it no one asking me to do something for them? Is it a nourishing meal? Is it to not cook? Whatever it is, it's such a personal question. And every day to give yourself a little something that you want, just that you want, just for the sake of wanting it, not because it serves your kid, not because it makes you a good mom, not because it takes care of anyone, just for the simple reason that you want.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we extremely appreciate you coming today and answering our questions.
Am I going to let you off the hook? Not a question?
I did, and I did have one.
Good.
What would you say, back to setting boundaries? You say you have to find something that you're afraid of when setting boundaries. What if you can't find what you're afraid of? And if you do find out what you're afraid of, what would you do going from there?
Right. Can I ask a boundary that might be hard for you to set?
Yeah, that's okay. I have a problem with saying no.
Welcome to
Uh,
being a woman.
Thank you.
Okay. And what do you imagine? So I would be you asking yourself, what do you imagine you'll have to give up? Or what will you lose if you say no?
I don't think I would lose anything. I would just feel bad.
You'd feel bad, like guilty?
Yes, bad as in guilty. Yes.
Guilty. And if you go under that, what is the belief there? Guilty means I'm doing something bad.
Okay, well, I don't think I'm doing anything bad. No.
So there's a part of you that feels like, I don't think I'm doing anything bad. And yet, if I think about doing that, I feel like I'm doing something bad.
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to hold those two coexisting truths, right? And we're going to lean into the one that says, there's some fear there that makes me guilty. Would that be presupposing that I'm supposed to do what other people want me to do or say yes?
Um I, yeah, I guess so.
Sounds like it. It sounds like if I'm bad when I say no, I mean, for this part, that I'm supposed to say yes.
Yes.
Okay. And if you were to just be curious, again, no judgment here, why are you supposed to say yes? By saying yes, what does that say about you?
It just make me look like a good person.
Ah, there it is. So a good person says yes.
Correct. Mhm.
So I guess we could sort of extrapolate there that what's threatening about no is that it implies I'm not a good person.
Yeah.
Right. So I would suggest getting curious about that assumption that a good person says yes, even it sounds like when saying yes to another person is kind of a no to you.
Mhm.
That's okay.
Sorry. I got a little nervous.
Yeah, I'm nervous all the time. But so we're just
Yep.
looking at that, right? That
Yeah.
the assumption is yes for everyone else, but you as a sentient being, it's okay to get the no.
Yeah.
How's that to live?
Well,
Yeah, fix that.
yeah, hard. You know, I get no sometimes, but yeah, it's kind of hard. I don't like it. I'm learning to set that boundary, and at times I feel bad, but it makes me feel good about myself sometimes.
So that's where I would go to explore and journal on, or reach out to me and we can talk more. See that? But that's your sweet spot right there, which is it feels bad sometimes to say no to myself. And it feels good because I know I challenged myself and did something different. But there's something in there about doesn't feel so good to assume everyone else can't handle a no, but I can and I'm used to it, or that's okay. But it's something in you is saying that's not so okay for me to get the no.
Yeah.
That's where I want you to connect. That place that says not so okay. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does make sense. Thank you so much.
Because I'd like it to be balanced where other people get yeses and they also can tolerate nos like everybody, right? But not just you can tolerate no. So you get some yeses too from you.
Yes, I'll do that to myself, for myself.
And again, always remember when we start a new habit, a new behavior, it's scary. It feels bumpy. It feels sort of unnatural. And we do it anyway, right? We keep walking through it. And because it's hard and new and different, actually is telling us we're on the right path.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, it all made sense. So
Good,
quick.
good, good. And we always can benefit from talking through our personal challenges with whomever that person is with you. It can be a spiritual leader, a therapist, a support group, but getting into the personal of it moves the dial in ways that talking on a more general platform or level it's a slower process. We want to get into our thing
Yeah.
and how we grew up and whether anyone was allowed to say no and what the women in our family model and infinitum.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do the way I grew up. A lot of, I'm not gonna say traumas, I may not have that much, but the woman in my family, not so good of a role model. But
So
I
that's
think I could
where
dive
you
into.
that's where you need to go in terms of examining. That goes deep. We learn
Very.
we learn how to say no. And if we never learn it, we have to learn it as grown-ups. And it's a challenge. And you will do that. But that's what I would talk about with someone.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for the advice. It's awesome.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nancy.
My pleasure. My privilege. And if anybody wants to reach to me, they can reach to me through my website, nancycolier.com. And I look forward to feedback on the book.
Awesome. We greatly appreciate you being here today.
Happy Saturday.